Good morning, dear students. Welcome to the session 5 of biology. Hope you all are safe at home and also you are learning what is taught in different subjects. So without wasting much time, let's recap what we have discussed in the previous session. We have discussed about the leaf tendril, that is the modifications in the leaf. We have discussed about leaf tendril, that is when a leaf is modified into a thin thread-like structure, it is called as a leaf tendril. Then we have discussed that a leaf is modified into pointed spines for defensive purpose, that is called as leaf spine. And also we have discussed that leaves, they get modified as scale leaves for protection and storage. Such type of leaves are called as scale leaves. Then we have discussed about the insectivorous plants, the plants which trap and digest insects for their protein requirement. Such plants are called as insectivorous plants. Then we have discussed about 3 insectivorous plants, that is the pitcher plant, where the leaf is modified into a pitcher to trap the insects. And we have discussed about bladderwort, where the leaves are highly segmented and it is modified into sac-like structures which are called as bladders. So we call it as bladderwort. Then we have discussed about Venus flytrap, that is the 3rd insectivorous plant, which when any insect is caught by the leaf, the edges of the leaf, they interlock, and this is another insectivorous plant. Then we have discussed about vegetative propagation by leaves, which occurs in plants like bryophyllum and begonia, where the stem or the leaf or the roots help in developing a new plant. Now the topic for the day is the flower and its parts. So let's begin. We can see a number of trees and plants all around us. We can also see a variety of beautiful flowers around us. So today we are going to study about flowers and its parts. Now before moving on, let me ask you a question. Do all plants produce flowers? No. In previous session, we have discussed that there are 2 types of plants, as you can see here also in the module. The first 3 plants or trees show no flower, but in the other 3 you can find flowers. So on the basis of production of flowers or no production of flowers, there are 2 types of plants: flowering plants and non-flowering plants. So those plants which cannot produce flowers are called non-flowering plants, whereas those plants which can produce flowers are called flowering plants. So we can say that flower is the most attractive and colorful part of flowering plants. Flower is very delicate or very soft. It is a special part or specialized part of the shoot system. It contains the reproductive structures, that is the male reproductive part as well as the female reproductive part. A flower usually lives only for a short time, and then it develops into a fruit. The fruit bears seeds which on planting in the soil produce new plants. As nowadays you can see in the mango plant or mango tree, few days back there were flowers and now slowly they have turned into fruit which is developing. So a flower is considered to be the reproductive organ of a plant which is attached to the shoot. As you can see in this module, the flower is attached to the shoot of the plant by a stalk. In the figure number 2 on the right hand side, you can see a flower is attached to the shoot of the plant by a stalk. This is the stalk which is attaching the flower to the main shoot. This stalk which is attaching the flower to the main shoot system is called as pedicel. What it is called? It is called as pedicel. The uppermost end of the pedicel is swollen. As you can see here, this is the uppermost portion of the pedicel and you can find it is a bit swollen. It is thick. It is known as thalamus, and all the other floral parts, that is the corolla, the stamens and the pistil, is attached to this thalamus. That is, all the floral parts are attached to the thalamus. Let me tell you one more important fact, that is, there are some flowers which do not have pedicel. As you can see here, with the pedicel, the flower is attached to the main stem. There are certain flowers which do not have this pedicel. They are without pedicel. So these flowers are called as sessile flowers. Example is seen in saffron plant. Here you can see in the module, corymb is there. These are sessile flowers. Means they do not have pedicel which is attaching them to the main stem. It arises directly. It is found, these flowers, they arise in clusters or in groups. Now, the flowers may vary in size, shape and color. As you can see in this module, the flowers are of various size, their shape is different, and also you can find beautiful attractive colors. But all the flowers have the same basic parts, that is, the different parts of a flower. They are arranged in 4 whorls, namely CALYX or SEPALS. As you can see here, this is the sepal, the green part. It is the sepal. The second part or second whorl or second part of the flower is the petal, which is visible in pink color here in the figure. This is the corolla or petal. The third whorl of the flower is ANDROECIUM. You can see here this yellow part which is attached with a thin thread-like structure to the thalamus, to the main part of the pistil, it is attached. This is the ANDROECIUM, or you can say stamen. The fourth whorl of the flower is Gynoecium. This is the center brownish color. You can see it is showing Gynoecium, or you can also call it as pistil. As you can see here, it is pistil. Now let us talk about the different parts of a flower in detail. The very first part which we have to discuss is CALYX, also called as SEPALS. It is the outermost whorl of a flower, and it consists of leaf-like structure. As you can see here, this is the leaf-like structure. This is the leaf-like structure. This is called as sepal. These sepals are green in color. What is the color of these sepals, these leafy structures? It is green in color. And the very important function of this calyx is to protect and enclose the inner whorls of the flower. As you can see here, this colored part of the flower was in the first figure not visible. It was enclosed inside the calyx. So we can say this calyx is protecting the three other whorls of the flower by enclosing it inside in the bud stage, when the flower is in bud stage. Bud means kali. So in the rose plant also you will find, if you have rose plants at your home, you can see it, or China rose plant, you can see that when it is in the bud condition, only the green leafy structure is visible, and this green leafy structure is actually enclosing the other three whorls inside it. Then the next whorl of the flower is corolla, or we also call it petals. It is the second whorl of the flower. And as you can see in this figure number 2, there are different segments of rose. So each segment of the corolla is known as petal. In both the figures you can see this, each segment, here we have 5 segments, and of rose flower we have so many segments. All these segments can be termed as petals. These petals are large, and in most of the flowers they are brightly colored. As you can see, these 2 flowers are having beautiful color. So students, have you ever thought why the petals are brightly colored? Let me tell you why. The petals of the flowers, or you can say the flowers, are brightly colored to attract the insects. As you can see in this module, so many insects. Here in the 2 figures it is butterfly, and the first one you can see a honeybee. So the flowers are brightly colored to attract insects, and when insects get attracted towards the flowers, they are helping in pollination. Then these flowers, they have particular smell. That is because of the petals. They have sweet smell. They are scented. there is particular aroma. For example, in jasmine, commonly we call it bela. It has a particular smell with which we can recognize the plant. So, this smell will also help the flowers to attract insects. As you can see in this module, insects like bees and butterflies, they get attracted towards the flower due to their smell, sweet smell. And these insects only further help in pollination. Now, what is pollination? Pollination is transfer of pollen grains of one flower to another flower. About it we will learn in the next session. Now let's move on with today's topic only. Corolla is the second whorl of a flower, which is formed of petals, and these petals are brightly colored. It is actually due to the presence of chromoplast, that is the pigment present in petals, giving bright colors. The bright colors, sweet smell, and also the nectar. What is nectar? Nectar is the juice which is produced in the flower. All these helps the insects to get attracted towards the flower, and also further it helps in pollination. Then we have to discuss about the third whorl of a flower, which is inner to the petals. It is composed, or it is formed of stamens. This is the stamen. This complete structure is called as stamen. As you can see in the second part of the figure, these stamens are attached to the pistil. This stamen is composed of two parts, that is the anther, and the stalk-like structure is called the filament. So, ANDROECIUM or stamen is the third whorl of a flower, which is inner to the petals, means after petals comes the ANDROECIUM, and is composed of stamens, and these stamens are the male reproductive organ of the flower, means the part of the flower which is involved in the formation of seed, and this helps to give rise to a new plant. Now, as you can see here, each stamen has two parts: a thin, long, thread-like structure that is called as filament, and a bilobed structure. Bilobed structure means a structure which is consisting of two lobes, or you can say two parts. It is sac-like structure. This is the filament. This is the filament, and to the filament this bilobed structure is attached, and this bilobed structure is called as anther. Each anther lobe has two pollen sacs. These are the two pollen sacs which are filled with pollen grains, and these pollen grains are powdery in nature or very small in size, present in the pollen sacs of the anther. The pollen grains are very minute, as you can see here. These pollen grains are very minute or small in size, but they take part in reproduction. It is the pollen grains only which produces the male gametes or the male reproductive cells, which is, so we can say that each stamen has two parts, that is a thin, long, thread-like stalk, which is called as the filament, and a bilobed structure, that is, it is having two lobes, sac-like structure, which is called as anther. Each anther has two pollen sacs, as you can see here in the dissected part of the pollen grain. It is showing two pollen sacs which are filled with pollen grains. These are very small in size. The pollen grains are very small in size, and they are formed where? It is formed in the pollen sacs of the anther. Pollen grains, because they are very minute and very small, though they are very small in size, they take part in reproduction. And it is the pollen grains only which produces the male gametes or the male reproductive cells for fertilization. Then the next whorl of the flower is gynoecium, or we can call it pistil. It is the fourth whorl of the flower, and it is the innermost whorl of a flower. It is formed of a single flask-shaped structure. As you can see here, it looks like a flask. We use flask in our houses, which is used for keeping water. So this structure somewhat looks like a flask, and it is called as gynoecium or pistil or carpel. It is the female reproductive organ. Now, let me tell you that each pistil or carpel consists of three parts. As you can see here in the figure, it has three parts. The stigma, that is at the tip. The middle part is the style, and the swollen part at the base is the ovary. Now, let us move on in detail about these three parts of gynoecium. First, let's talk about stigma. Stigma is the terminal part or the tip of the pistil. As you can see here, this is the pistil, middle part. At the tip we can see a knob-like structure which is called as stigma. This is generally sticky in nature and hairy. The reason why it is sticky or rough or hairy is so that when pollen grain is brought by the insect, it can be trapped, and further it can be taken up for the process of fertilization. So we can say that the stigma is meant for receiving pollen grains during pollination. Next part of the flower of the gynoecium is the style. Style is a long, this middle part, it is a long thread-like structure which is the middle part of the carpel or pistil. It connects the stigma with the ovary, that is the basal part, which is swollen, the basal part of the gynoecium. This is the basal part of the gynoecium. It is swollen and it is called as ovary. Inside the ovary there is presence of ovules. These are the ovules, as you can see here in the figure. In this module there is a picture of ovule. These ovules, they contain the female gametes. As we have discussed now that the pollen sacs consist of pollen grains, which are the male reproductive gametes. So here these ovules contain the female gametes or female reproductive cells or eggs, or we can also call it as ova. These eggs also take part in reproduction. So we can say that the ovules are composed of female reproductive cells which take part in reproduction, and finally through fertilization it gives rise to seed. So after fertilization the ovary matures and forms the fruit, and ovules form the seeds. So we have discussed the different parts of a flower. This is the complete flower. This is the pedicel which attaches the flower to the main shoot. This is the leaf. Then it has petals which are brightly colored. Here you can see the stamen, and the center part of the flower is the pistil, which is composed of the style, stigma and the ovary. So here are the 4 whorls of the flower. In detail you can see this structure, this green leafy structure which we find at the base are the sepals. The colored segments of the flower, here it is showing in blue color, but generally we have red color in hibiscus or China rose. It is corolla. Then this yellow part, it shows the stamen, that is ANDROECIUM, consisting of 2 parts, the bilobed structure called anther, and this thread-like structure which is attaching it to the base is the filament, and the center part is called the carpel or gynoecium, which is consisting of the stigma, style and the ovary. Now, let me tell you something more about the 4 whorls of a flower. The calyx and corolla are called as accessory whorls. Why they are called accessory whorls? There is a reason. The reason is they just help in pollination, where from a flower the insect carries the pollen grains and it is transferred to another flower. But they do not take part in reproduction directly. They are just acting to transfer the pollen grains from one flower to another flower. Then ANDROECIUM and gynoecium are called as essential whorls. Why they are called so? The reason is because they are the reproductive organs of the flower and they take part in the seed formation. Then the next topic for the day is we have to discuss about the different types of flowers. Depending upon the presence of reproductive parts, there are two types of flowers: unisexual flowers and bisexual flowers. Now first let's talk about bisexual flowers. If both male, this is the stamen, the male reproductive organ, and the pistil, which is the female reproductive organ, are present in the same flower. You can find in both the figures, it is showing the stamen and the pistil, the male and the female reproductive organs on the same flower. So, such type of flowers are called as bisexual flowers. Example is hibiscus, that is China rose, mustard, lily, rose, pea, gram, etc. Then, what about unisexual flowers? I think you must have understood what are unisexual flowers. Okay, I will tell you. Unisexual flowers are the flowers that have either the male reproductive organ or the female reproductive organ in the flower. That is why we say that a unisexual flower is of two types. Those flowers that have only stamens, that is the male reproductive part only is present, such flowers are called as staminate flowers. What they are called? Staminate flowers. And those unisexual flowers which bear only the pistil, that is the female reproductive organ, such flowers are called as pistillate flowers. Then, depending upon the presence of floral whorls, there may be again two types of flower: complete flower and incomplete flower. Flowers that have all the four whorls, that is the sepals, petals, stamens and pistils. All these whorls are present in the same flower. Such flowers are called as complete flowers. So can we call such flowers as bisexual flowers? Yes. Then what about incomplete flowers? Incomplete flowers are the flowers that lack one or more of the four whorls. That means incomplete flowers are missing a typical part. Like here in the figure you can see the petal is missing. So that means one whorl is missing. So such flowers are called as incomplete flower. Example is seen in papaya and pumpkin also. And for complete flower, we have example like China rose, mustard, pea, etc. Now moving on to the next topic, that is functions of a flower. The very first function of the flower is reproduction. Flowers, as you know now, that it is the reproductive organ of a plant, and it is composed of male as well as female gamete. So, its function is to produce fruits and seeds, and the seeds only germinate and produces new plant. Then, the second function of the flower is its ornamental value. You must have seen that flowers are used for various purposes. Generally, we find it for decoration at various places like marriages, parties. For making the bouquet, we use flowers. Then, the third function of the flower is it acts as a source of food. We can consider it as a source of food also, as the ovary of the flower develops into fruit and its ovules, they form the seeds, and these seeds only help in growing the new plants. Therefore, we can consider a flower as a source of food as well. The fourth function of the flower is its religious value, its religious significance. Flowers are used for worship. You must have observed in your house also, mother is using the flowers while she is praying to God. She is using it for worship and also sometimes for making garlands. Let's recap what we have discussed today. We have discussed that flower is the reproductive part of plant. It is a modified shoot. Then we have discussed that calyx and corolla are the accessory whorls of a flower. And we have also discussed that stamens, they form the male reproductive whorl, whereas carpel or pistil, it forms the female reproductive whorl. Then we have discussed about complete flowers. Complete flowers have all the four whorls and are called as bisexual flowers. Then we have discussed that flowers with male reproductive whorl alone are called as staminate flowers, and those with female whorl or female flowers only are called as pistillate flowers. So we consider such types of flowers as incomplete or unisexual flowers. Then we have discussed about pollen grains, that pollen grains are the male gametes and they are formed in the stamens. Eggs or ova are the female gametes and they are formed in the ovary. With this, we end up today's session. Stay blessed, stay protected, and keep learning. God be with you all.